Funded in part by the Federal Highway Administration, the North Carolina Department of Transportation has worked collaboratively with the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction to produce this series on North Carolina scenic byways. Off the beaten path, many scenic byways crisscross our state, and residents and visitors travel at a leisurely pace. Designated by the North Carolina Department of Transportation, each route has been carefully selected to give visitors an opportunity to experience the diverse beauty and culture of the Tar Heel State. Follow these byways and you see breathtaking scenery, from the curvy mountain roads of the Blue Ridge Mountains and through the rural countryside of our Piedmont to our crystal blue coastline. There's much to discover as we explore roads less traveled. So, enjoy the journey. For a glimpse into our natural, cultural, and historical heritage, North Carolina Scenic Byways presents the Blue Ridge Parkway. Often referred to as the original scenic byway, the Blue Ridge Parkway in North Carolina is recognized as an all-American road by the Federal Highway Administration. This internationally recognized drive blends landscape and engineering while protecting and proclaiming the mountain culture. It took 52 years to complete construction of this scenic tourist route that connects the Shenandoah National Park in Virginia to the Great Smoky National Park in North Carolina. The parkway winds along the crests of the southern Appalachians, providing long views of many ranges. Because the parkway is rather long, 252 miles in North Carolina, we cannot travel the entire length, but we'll highlight a few selected sites of special interest. We start by motoring along the Lynn Cove Viaduct, one of the most complicated segmented bridges ever built. Instead of blasting into the side of the mountain, engineers elevated this elaborate S-curve bridge to limit the impact on the ecologically sensitive Grandfather Mountain. If you travel north to south, 1/3 of the way down the parkway, you come to Grandfather Mountain, which is our first stop. Here we are climbing to the highest point in the Blue Ridge Mountain Range at Grandfather Mountain's Callaway Peak, 1 mile above sea level. As one of the most environmentally significant mountains in the world, Grandfather Mountain is recognized by the UN as an International Biosphere Reserve, which means a place where humans and nature can thrive in harmony. Everyone wants to lead the expedition across Grandfather Mountain's mile-high swinging bridge. Made out of steel, but free to gently sway, it is America's highest suspension footbridge. Walk this bridge and you can count 228 feet. At either end of the bridge, you can look around in every direction, and you are surrounded by the great peaks of the southern Appalachians. Another place you don't want to miss is Grandfather's wildlife habitats. These large environmental enclosures are built around the animals' actual native habitat. Viewing areas give visitors an up-close perspective of the animals as they live in the wild. Separated from the animals by moats, or elevated above the habitats on large retaining walls, these viewing areas allow you to stand only a few feet away from animals you probably won't see in everyday life. Let's first visit the American black bear, who ranges throughout the forested area of the United States. The black bear looks big, and it is. Bears usually weigh between 150 and 400 pounds. If you study the habitat of bears and look around, you might discover what they eat to stay strong. It might be a surprise, but most of their diet consists of fruits, berries, nuts, and roots. They'll also go for fish, rodents, carrion, and insects. And what about their young? Mother bears deliver 1 to 5 cubs per litter. When there is danger or she wants a break, Mom sends the baby bears up the tree and she guards from below. Watch how the bears climb. They are very agile. Their thick, sturdy claws help them crawl up to very high places, climb around, and then come back down the trees. When it grows up, a bear's lumbering walk makes you think that it is slow, but that's not true. A bear like this can run 35 miles an hour. After eating a lot during the summer and storing up fat, a bear goes into a den in a protected location to sleep for the winter. They don't eat or drink for up to 6 months and seldom venture outside. On warm days, they can wake up and come out to forage for food. The bear you see here is a Kodiak bear. Less than 1% of bears on the East Coast are this cinnamon color. Next, let's move on to another of grandfather's habitats and see if we can't spot an eagle. Eagles that were once wild but injured have found a home with the licensed caretakers at Grandfather Mountain. The bald eagle, a protected species, symbolizes the freedom and power of our country. Eagles can be spotted nesting along the water. When they fly, their wingspan is 6 to 8 feet. To identify a bald eagle, you need to look at the color of its feathers. This eagle has a white head and white tail feathers. Years ago, the English word bald referred to a white head. Look close and you'll notice that the large eyes are so big they are fixed in their sockets. The eagle has to turn its head to look around. Another type of eagle is called the golden eagle. It's even larger, with a wingspan of up to 7 feet. The adult eagles are all gold. Unlike the bald eagle, the golden eagle has feathers down to its toes. The sharp talons are used to grasp prey, including small animals such as rabbits, rodents, and small birds. This eagle nests on rocky ledges on steep mountainsides. Another animal you're less likely to observe in the wild is the cougar. Also known as the mountain lion or panther, it ranges throughout our western wilderness areas. This large, slender, yellowish-brown cat can be up to 8.5 feet long, including the tail, which is as long as his body. The territory for a mountain lion can be 100 miles in circumference. The prey this cat hunts for varies from rodents to full-grown deer. Our next habitat is built to protect a panther's prey, the white-tailed deer. A deer lives in small bands called herds, comprised of a mother doe and her baby fawn. A deer has reddish-brown fur with white undersides in the summer, and it measures 3 feet from the shoulder to the ground. Its white tail goes up like a flag when a deer senses danger. The antlers on this young male are small, but will shed each year and grow back to be bigger. Now it's time to close our short story about animal habitats and get back on the road. We wind our way back down the hill to catch up with activities held in fields at the base of the mountain we've been on. One of the most exciting festivals held at Grandfather Mountain is the Scottish Highland Games, the largest gathering of Scottish clans in the world. Every year, families of Scottish ancestors come together to celebrate their traditions and compete in the Highland Games. It thrills and excites viewers to see these large groups of marching bands proudly dressed in traditional Scottish kilts. Listen to how these musicians drum and play bagpipes that whine and drone in low tones. Many come to Grandfather to observe the piping, drumming, and Scottish athletic competitions. The original Scottish Games began hundreds of years ago so that the Scots could choose the strongest men to work for the kings and chiefs. For 4 days each year, as many as 40,000 people gather to watch these Scottish athletes perform feats of strength. In every area of the field, there is a different athletic event to watch. This competition is called Putting the Stone. Originally, this game helped Scottish warriors to develop their strength and accuracy. They practiced this skill so they could better throw a stone at English knights in battle and knock them off their horses. The caber developed early because of the scarce number of bridges in Scotland. Tossing the caber was a way of putting footlogs across streams. Later, cabers were used instead of ladders to storm the high walls of castles. The bear foot race is an adaptation of a race following Scottish tradition. The fastest runners with the greatest endurance were chosen to be messengers for the king or chieftain during battle. The 26-mile marathon is a commemoration of distance runners. Messengers in Scotland needed to run long distances in order to call the clans together and to inform kings or chieftains of pending battles. As runners come in to finish their run at the track, in-field activities are ongoing. This herder signals his dog to round up and direct the sheep back to the pen. In Scotland, the wool from sheep was made into material for blankets and clothing that would provide warmth in the wet, cold climate. Notice the kilt and tall socks worn by this Scottish herder. The kilt was better than pants when warriors wanted to ford streams that had no footlogs. So the socks wouldn't get wet. They could be taken off to wade streams and then put back on. The 3 yards of their kilt could also be used as a wool sleeping bag when warriors were in the field or at battle. Harp competitions provided music for family gatherings and ceilidhs. The harps, the fiddles, and the bagpipes provided a source of entertainment for the clans. The bagpipe is a most ancient instrument, dating back to early Egypt. The instrument itself is like a portable pipe organ. Because they can be carried easily and played on any type of terrain, bagpipes helped the Scots unnerve their enemy before they charged. In fact, the British considered the bagpipe an instrument of war and eventually outlawed it. This music was so important that each chieftain had his own piper who wrote marching tunes to commemorate important clan events and victories. Many of the fiddle tunes that we know today were originally the bagpipe tunes of Scotland. And did you know that Highland dancing developed because it helped their warriors attain balance and agility? This is one of the activities at the Highland Games where children of all ages have a chance to perform. And here's another, where kids get an early start in perfecting their skills and prepare for the time when they can participate in the adult competitions. It's been a glorious day on Grandfather Mountain, and we hate to leave the exciting events, but it is time to move on. As you drive along the parkway, you can't help but wonder how these mountains were formed. The mountain building process is one of creation and destruction. Geologists tell us that millions of years ago, huge plates that formed the crust of the earth collided and folded up slabs of crust. This mass is made up of 2 kinds of rock: igneous rock, that is cooled molten material, and metamorphic rock, that is formed under heat and pressure. The other half of the mountain story is their slow destruction. The constant wind that blows across the exposed ridge tops, the rain of summer, and the freezing and thawing water in crevices have worked together to reduce the Blue Ridge to the low profile of one of the world's oldest mountain ranges. The mountains crumble a little bit at a time. Eventually, most of the broken bits of the rock end up in streams and rivers that flow down from the mountains. These little bits of rock and sand settle to the bottom of a lake or ocean, and over time, the layers turn into another type of rock named sedimentary. Let's hop back onto the byway and drive further down the parkway. Our next site to visit is the Museum of North Carolina Minerals, which gives us background about the geological features of our state. The rocks you see all around you on the parkway, the mountains, the canyons, and riverbeds are all made of minerals. We can learn all about what the mountains are made up of as we visit this special place along our route. Here, outside the Museum of North Carolina Minerals, you see a series of large rocks. A rock is made up of 2 or more minerals, which are composed of the same substance. This igneous rock is composed of dunite. This metamorphic rock is amphibolite, and this sedimentary rock is dolomite. Let's go inside the Museum of North Carolina Minerals to see many treasures and learn more about rocks and minerals. The path leading into the central part of the museum is made to replicate the geological fault at Linville Falls. It shows you the differences in how, over time, layers of rock were formed. Unlike rocks, minerals are made of elements, either a single element or a combination. Unlike a rock, if you were to cut a mineral sample, it would look the same throughout. You can tell different minerals apart by what crystal shape they are. Pyrite are square crystals. Quartz are hexagonal, which means it has 6 sides. Here's another huge quartz crystal, found in North Carolina. This display explains geological events that produced a treasure trove of mineral resources and placed them within human reach. Next, we shift gears from a focus on geological wonders to an exploration of artifacts that inform us about culture and history. Back on the Blue Ridge Parkway, we travel some distance through beautiful scenery. Past Mount Mitchell State Park, Black Mountain, and Mount Pisgah to the very end of the parkway. A short jog off the end takes us to the town of Cherokee, where we make 2 stops at a museum and village. The Museum of the Cherokee Indian presents the history and preserves the culture of the Cherokee Indians. Our visit to the museum begins as we examine artifacts from a period before written history. This gives us insight into how the principal people probably lived many years ago. This display contains a variety of gorgets from the Mississippian period. These carved shell discs were worn around the neck. They depict myths and stories. The Cherokee were a mighty nation that negotiated with other nations to protect their homeland. Here we see Ostinaco, stalking turkey, and pigeon preparing to go to London to meet King George III in 1762. Next, we stop to admire this 3-part statue, which represents some of the factions of the Cherokees and the different paths they took because of the removal. One very small group signed the Treaty of New Echota, who gave up their eastern homeland for western land and $5 million. John Ross, principal chief, counseled his people not to resist removal. He was afraid that the soldiers would kill the Cherokee. The only person to resist was Solly, who killed 2 soldiers. The majority of Cherokee Indians tried every legal means available, but were forcibly removed from their land. This Cherokee nation journeyed west on the Trail of Tears. Another group, the Oconaluftee, applied to become U.S. citizens. They owned their own land and were allowed to stay in North Carolina. These citizen Indians formed the core of the present-day Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. Cherokees who hid in the woods to escape removal and those who walked back from Oklahoma joined this group. Together, with the help of a white man, Will Thomas, the Oconaluftee bought back some of their original land. This became today's Qualla boundary. The next interactive display in the museum portrays how desperately the Indians wanted to remain in their homes on their land.
When the soldiers came to our house, my father wanted to fight, but my mother told him that they would kill him, and so we surrendered and had to leave behind all the rest of our possessions.
Finally, you experience the infamous Trail of Tears, when the Cherokee were removed from their homelands in the east and were forced to travel west to new territory. More than 4,000 people died on the Trail of Tears, 1 out of every 4. Most were children and elders. Even though the Cherokees lost much of their land and many people on the Trail of Tears, the Cherokee Nation survives today. Most live in Oklahoma. They are the largest tribe in the United States. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians is proud that they still live on some of their original land in the mountains of North Carolina, and that they tell their story through this museum. Another place to learn more about the life of the Cherokee is close by, at the Oconaluftee Indian Village. The proud heritage of the Cherokee people is realistically portrayed. Here you can see how the American Indians actually lived over 250 years ago, as guides in native costumes lead you through the village. A special place at the village is the 7-sided council house, located in the middle of the village. Here, seats were arranged so there would be a section for each clan. The number 7 was important to the Cherokee. There were 7 clans, 7 counselors to the chiefs, and 7 important celebrations. The designs around the central fireplace repeat this sacred number. Take a look at these masks, propped on these posts. They were worn by lead dancers during ceremonies that were a form of praying. For instance, this old-style mask was worn to ask the Creator for a safe and successful bear hunt. This one, a booger mask, was used to prevent disease or danger. And this mask, a face with a snake on top, represents a medicine man. Down the path, you can observe how Indians make a dugout canoe. They started small fires on top of the log. After the fire went out, the charcoal was chipped away by using a stone axe. Another demonstration shows us how the Indians worked with native clay found along the streams and rivers of the area. To make smaller pots, the clay is shaped into a ball, and fingers are used to give the pot its shape. A shine is applied by rubbing the pot with a smooth stone. The pots on display here were produced by another method, known as coil. You can also see the designs applied to the completed fired pots. The craft worker here is weaving a basket made from river cane or white oak saplings. For a single weave basket, they make the bottom first, then build up the sides, place on the handles, and add the rims. The baskets hanging here show you the variety of styles woven. Baskets like these were used for different purposes, to gather wild food or collect vegetables and fruits grown in the garden. Another type of weaving is called finger weaving. The ladies can work with 10 to 200 strands at a time. When completed, these are used as belts or can be sewn together for a blanket or shawl. There's much to explore at the Oconaluftee Indian Village, but it's time to end our visit. We take with us what we've learned about how the Cherokee people made crafts and used to live. As we reach the tail of our Blue Ridge Parkway tour, let's reflect on the highlights. We've gained historical and cultural perspective. We've learned about natural features and how the rocks and minerals of the mountains are formed. We've explored the animal habitats at Grandfather Mountain and sensed the excitement of the Highland Games. And all along the way, we've experienced the unique scenic beauty that can only be found along the Blue Ridge Parkway.